Jacob had never thought of himself as the paranoid type. He was a quiet man in his late 20s who lived alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. The building was old, with thin walls that carried every sound. Neighbors arguing, pipes rattling, and the occasional footsteps in the hallway at odd hours. But for Jacob, it was home. A few weeks before the events that would change his life, there had been a break-in in the apartment complex. Someone had jimmied open a window on the ground floor, stolen electronics, and vanished without a trace. That was enough to make Jacob uneasy. He worked long hours, often coming home late, and he didn't like the idea of strangers possibly lurking nearby. To ease his mind, he bought a small hidden camera disguised as a smoke detector. He mounted it high in the hallway ceiling, angled perfectly toward his front door. The idea was simple. If anyone ever tried to break in, he'd have evidence. It wasn't paranoia, Jacob told himself. Just being cautious. On a Friday night in December, he came home from work, heated up leftovers, and flipped on the TV. The day had drained him, and before long, he had dozed off on the couch. The glow of the television flickered across the walls, the sound barely audible as he drifted into sleep. The last thing he remembered was glancing at the clock, 11:47 p.m. When he woke up, it was nearly morning. His neck was stiff, his mouth dry. The TV was still on, playing some infomercial. As he got up, he noticed the apartment felt unusually cold. He checked the windows locked, the door latched. Shrugging it off, he made coffee and sat down at his computer. That's when he remembered the camera. With nothing better to do, Jacob opened the app connected to the hidden device. He scrolled back through the night's footage casually at first, expecting nothing more than silence. But then, at 2:13 a.m., his heart nearly stopped. The footage showed the front door creaking open. Slowly, silently, a man stepped inside. Tall, lean, dressed in dark clothing with the hood of a sweatshirt pulled tightly over his head. He moved with eerie caution, as if he knew exactly where Jacob was sleeping. Jacob's chest tightened. He fast-forwarded a few seconds, his eyes wide. The man didn't just slip inside, he stopped, stood perfectly still in the hallway. And then, without hesitation, he turned his head and looked directly at the camera. Jacob's stomach dropped. The intruder had seen it, seen him. For several seconds, the figure stared into the lens, his face shadowed, but his posture deliberate, like a challenge. Then he turned and walked out of frame, moving deeper into the apartment. Jacob frantically scrubbed through the footage, his hands trembling on the mouse. The intruder never came back into view. Minutes stretched on. 10, 20, 30. The man had vanished into the apartment and never left through the door. Jacob's blood ran cold. He hadn't locked the bedroom door before falling asleep. He remembered how close it was, just down the hall. He replayed the video again and again, hoping he had missed the moment the man left. But no matter how carefully he watched, the result was the same. The stranger entered. He looked into the camera. He disappeared. His eyes darted to the hallway, to his bedroom door, now standing innocently ajar. He got up, his body shaking, and walked toward the room with hesitant steps. The bed was empty, the closet shut, the window locked. There was no sign of anyone, but Jacob couldn't explain what he had seen. For the next week, he barely slept. Every small noise jolted him awake. Every creak in the floorboards sent his heart racing. And then, on the seventh night, it happened again. Not the break-in, at least not one he could see, but at exactly 2:13 a.m., as he lay in bed wide awake, Jacob heard it. A faint creak in the hallway, as if weight was shifting on the old wood. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps stopping just outside his door. He didn't move, didn't breathe. He waited, but when he finally dared to check the footage the next morning, the hallway camera showed nothing at all. And yet Jacob swears that, even now, he still hears it sometimes. The sound of someone standing there in the darkness, just waiting for him to fall asleep again. Sometimes the scariest part of a hidden camera isn't what it shows, but what it doesn't. For months, Megan had told herself she was just imagining things. When she moved into her new apartment, the ad had described it as charming, affordable, and close to campus. What the ad didn't mention was the unsettling feeling that seemed to come with it. Megan's roommate, Claire, was a quiet woman in her early 20s who kept mostly to herself. At first, Megan thought it was just normal shyness, but as weeks went by, Claire's habits grew strange. Claire never left her room during the day. She kept the curtains drawn, lights dimmed, and rarely answered questions with more than a word or two. She paid her share of the rent on time, never caused a disturbance, and yet something about her unsettled Megan. The real problem started when Megan noticed little things missing from her room: lip gloss, a hairbrush, and even a shirt she swore she had folded neatly in her dresser. At first, she chalked it up to forgetfulness. But then, late one night, she came home from a study group and walked past Claire's door. It was cracked open just enough for Megan to see the faint blue glow of a laptop screen inside. And there, on the wall, she saw something that made her stomach turn. It was a photo of her. She only caught a glimpse before Claire shut the door quickly, but Megan couldn't shake the image. It wasn't a selfie or anything she remembered posing for. It looked like it had been taken through her bedroom window. The next morning, Megan tried to act normal. She brewed coffee, greeted Claire politely, and pretended nothing was wrong. But the thought gnawed at her. Why would Claire have a photo of me? How did she even get it? A friend suggested Megan get a small hidden camera for her bedroom, just to be safe. Megan laughed it off at first, but that night, she ordered one online. She told herself it was silly, but deep down, she knew she needed answers. 2 days later, the camera arrived. Megan disguised it as a digital clock on her nightstand. That night, she made sure to lock her window and her bedroom door. Then she went to bed. The next morning, she checked the footage. At first, it was nothing, just her sleeping, the rise and fall of her breathing. But then, around 2:30 a.m., the footage changed. The bedroom door creaked open. Megan froze as she watched herself sleeping on screen, completely unaware of the figure stepping quietly inside. It was Claire. She moved silently across the room, her pale face visible in the dim light. She stood over Megan for several minutes, just watching. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes unblinking. Then, with a strange tenderness, Claire reached out and brushed a strand of Megan's hair away from her face. Megan's stomach flipped. She scrubbed forward in the video, her pulse racing. Claire didn't just stand there. She began going through Megan's drawers. She picked up clothes, held them to her face, and sniffed them. She scrolled through Megan's phone left charging on the nightstand. She even opened the closet, taking something and tucking it under her arm before slipping back out of the room. The footage ended with the door slowly shutting. Megan sat frozen in her chair. Her roommate wasn't just odd. She was dangerous. She debated going to the police, but she knew that with just one night of footage, they might not take her seriously. So she left the camera running every night for a week. Each morning, Megan watched in horror as Claire entered again and again. Sometimes she stood over her for 5 minutes. Sometimes she rifled through drawers. And on the final night, the most disturbing moment happened. Claire pulled out her phone and took dozens of pictures of Megan sleeping. Megan's blood ran cold. She finally confronted Claire, but when she burst into her room, she found it empty. Not just Claire, but everything. The bed was stripped, the closet cleared, the laptop gone. The only thing left behind was a single printed photograph, taped to the wall above the desk. It was Megan sleeping, taken from the exact angle of her hidden camera. Claire had known all along. Some secrets aren't discovered. They're left behind for you to find. When he moved into his new rental house, he promised himself he'd never go down there unless absolutely necessary. The landlord had described it as unfinished storage, and the steep wooden stairs that led into the darkness looked like something out of a nightmare. At first, Tyler ignored it completely. He lived upstairs, went to work, watched TV, and pretended the basement didn't exist. But soon, he noticed strange things that made it impossible to ignore. It started with noises. At night, while lying in bed, he would hear faint creaks, like footsteps on old wood. Sometimes, it sounded like the shuffling of boxes or the scrape of something being dragged across the floor. The first few nights, He dismissed it as the house settling. But when the sounds grew louder, he knew it was something else. One night, while studying for a late exam, he decided to set his phone's recording app to capture the noises. He left the phone at the top of the basement stairs and went to bed. The next morning, he listened back. The first half of the recording was silent, but around 2:15 a.m., there was movement, slow, deliberate creaks. Then came the sound of breathing. Heavy, labored breathing. Tyler's stomach twisted as he realized the phone was picking it up just beyond the basement door. Then came a whisper. A low, raspy voice saying only one word, "Down." Tyler slammed the recording off and sat in silence, his pulse hammering in his ears. For days, he avoided the basement completely. He even shoved a chair under the door handle at night. But the noises didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. Sometimes the door rattled, like someone was trying to push it open. Other times, he woke to the sound of something scratching against the wood from the other side. Finally, Tyler couldn't take it anymore. He borrowed a friend's small hidden camera and positioned it in the kitchen, facing the basement door. That night, he left it recording. The footage he found the next morning nearly made him leave the house for good. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the basement door slowly creaked open. From the darkness below, a figure emerged. It was tall, unnaturally thin, with long arms that reached almost to its knees. Its face was obscured by shadows, but its movements were jerky, unnatural, like it wasn't used to walking. It stood in the kitchen for several minutes, swaying slightly, its head tilting from side to side as if listening. Then, slowly, it turned toward the camera. Tyler's breath caught as the figure leaned closer, its face still hidden in shadow. For several seconds, it just stared directly into the lens. Then, without a sound, it backed away, retreating into the basement and shutting the door behind it. Tyler couldn't believe what he had seen. He replayed the footage again and again, hoping it was some kind of glitch or trick of the light. But each time, the figure was there. The next night, he resolved to catch it himself. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and his phone, he waited in the kitchen until after midnight. When the noises started, the faint creaks and shuffling, he forced himself to open the basement door. The air hit him immediately, damp, cold, and heavy. Slowly, he descended the stairs, each step groaning under his weight. His flashlight beam swept across old shelves, boxes, and rusted pipes. Then, at the far end of the basement, he saw it. The figure stood there, half hidden in the shadows. Its head was bent at an unnatural angle, its arms dangling lifelessly at its sides. Tyler froze, barely able to breathe. Suddenly, the figure jerked forward. Fast. Tyler stumbled back, dropping his phone. His flashlight flickered, plunging the basement into near darkness. He scrambled up the stairs, slamming the door shut and shoving the chair back under the handle. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, he gathered his things and left the house for good. When he returned weeks later with the landlord, the basement was empty, completely bare. The shelves, boxes, and even the old pipes had been removed, leaving nothing but concrete walls. When Tyler asked the landlord about it, the man looked confused. "There was never anything down there," he said. "It's been empty for years." Tyler showed him the footage from the hidden camera, desperate for answers. But when he pressed play, the recording was gone. The file was corrupted, replaced by static. And then, just faintly, beneath the static, came the sound of breathing. Some things in the basement aren't meant to be recorded, but they'll always find a way back up.